All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up today. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes here to show up. Appreciate you being on so far. We got a lot of information to cover today. Absolutely everything that you want to know about real estate in Belize is going to be covered here. Hopefully you guys have brought lots of questions too. I'm going to go ahead and do a presentation first to start off the day. Then when we're done with that, we'll go to a live question and answer so that you guys can get all the questions answered that you want. So let's give everybody about 3 or 4 more minutes here to jump on the line here, and we'll get started. Okay. Well, once again, welcome everybody. My name is William Narod. As always, I am the Paradise Guy, and today I'm going to go over real estate in Belize. I call this webinar Belize Real Estate Reset. And the reason why I call it a reset is because obviously given what's happened here with COVID-19, tourism in the country of Belize basically came to a screeching halt. Because of that, obviously the real estate market has felt certain pressures, mostly downward pressures at this point, to adjust. There are people in this market right now that want to divest themselves of their properties. There are people in this market that want to buy properties. So there's a nice ebb and flow of supply and demand going on. But what I believe is coming down the road here is an opportunity like we haven't seen in maybe 10 or 20 years in Belize, where people like you, people like me, and other people that maybe aren't watching this yet, but will watch this in the future, are going to be looking to capitalize on the opportunity that this presents. So real estate in Belize, this webinar is first of all going to go over just some of the basics in this presentation. While we're going through that, I urge you to write down any questions that you may have. At the end, we're going to have a live question and answer session to make sure you get your questions answered. And of course, as part of your fee for being here on this webinar today, you will also have a 20-minute phone or video consultation with me at some time in the future, and you can ask me even more questions during that time. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm here to support you and be your trusted resource for all things Belize. So with that in mind, welcome once again. My name is William Narod. I've got Christina here with me today to help me out as well. She is my partner and definitely a lot of the brains and brawn behind the scenes that helps Paradise Guy do what it is. So she's going to help me out as far as getting all of this information out to you, because there is a lot to talk about. So with that, let's get started. First thing we're going to talk about is an introduction to the Belize market. There are many types of properties available in the market. There is land, there's of course condos, there are townhomes, there are single family homes, and there are commercial businesses. There are lots of ways to invest in Belize real estate. Some of them are speculative, some of them are cash flow oriented, some of them are lifestyle oriented, meaning you want to have an investment where it's going to provide a good lifestyle, and of course it's going to provide something that's going to give you the opportunity to have a return in equity and also an increase in cash flow. So you want to make sure you know exactly what you're doing when you go into the marketplace. What are your objectives? How do you want your investment to perform for you? How long are you going to personally use your residence, your investment? Are you going to build something on it? All these are considerations that I want you to start thinking about as we go through this presentation. And again, as I hit on points that make you think, well, I have a question about that, just jot them down. Again, at the end, we'll go ahead and put those up on the screen and make sure that those questions get answered. So let's talk about the inventory size. Inventory in Belize is limited compared to maybe the North American market, which we're used to. In the North American market, we've got MLS systems with thousands, maybe millions of properties available, and those properties are easily scanned, easily identified. You can look up comparables, you can look up data on how long they've been on the market, what was the price they sold on last time. You can do lots of things, but here in this market, it's a much different game. There is far less inventory. There, on the island of Ambergris Caye, for example, there are only 20,000 people approximately. Now that was before COVID. Since COVID, a lot of people have repatriated and gone back to the United States or Canada or wherever they're from. Maybe some of those will be back, maybe some of them won't. Also during that time, there have been a lot of new people that have contacted me saying, I want to move down to Belize. So I want to help those people get down here, invest in the opportunities that maybe some of these other people left behind, and help that transition happen so that everybody wins. So let's talk about general liquidity considerations. Okay, liquidity in this market is interesting because there is no financing as we're used to in the United States. Getting a loan on a property with 5, 10, 15, 20% down as we're used to in the States simply does not exist here in Belize. So you have to come down with a chunk of cash. Generally 40 to 60% down is the going rate. And then the owner very oftentimes will carry some paper back or carry a note or do an owner will carry is what we call it. And they will carry that note for 3, 5, 7, sometimes 10 years, sometimes with interest rates as low as 5%, sometimes with interest rates as high as 12 or 14%. It depends upon what their scenario is, what your scenario is, and of course, timing and negotiation on the deal. That's why representation, which we'll talk back later on, is very, very important as well. So things sit on the market here in Belize for a little bit longer than you would have expected. Now, when I first came to Belize years ago, I was in a hurry. I came down, I jumped into some deals as quickly as I could because I was afraid of missing out. That was a mistake. Now, there are many real estate agents that you will talk to that will tell you, you gotta hurry, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, get your checkbook out and let's go to market and buy something today or you're gonna miss out. I would encourage you to be wary of people giving you that information. The reason why is because nothing happens fast in Belize. Hear me again, nothing happens fast in Belize. Island time, what we call it, is a real thing. The land of mañana, as they call it in Mexico, well, it kind of exists all about in the region of Belize and Mexico. And so what you need to know is that it's going to take time for a property to get on the market, get exposure, get to the selling point, get to closure, get the title transferred. So whether you're in that transaction or whether somebody else is that transaction, you have to make sure that you are in a patient mode. So that being said, before you come down and you decide to buy something, make sure you've got some liquidity. Make sure you've got some cash ready. Because if you make an offer contingent upon the sale of a property you have in the United States or contingent upon the sale of a property in Canada or wherever else, that offer is generally not going to be taken very seriously. What they want to see is that you're willing to put some money down here in escrow and that you've got a reasonable closing date and that you've got a way to verify funds and show that you can actually perform and get that deal to closing. See, people that are selling down here want to make sure they can get their money out. They don't want to waste a lot of time going through a transaction and having it not get to the closing table. So let's talk about appreciation potential, pricing considerations, and of course, realistic value. Appreciation in this market has been going at 10 to 15, sometimes 20% on an annual basis. That varies depending upon the time. This year, I would say that has gone in the opposite direction. What I want you to do is to think about why that might be. Tourism has stopped. There are no new people until August 15th coming into this marketplace that are pushing the demand for the market. Tourism is the number one driver of pretty much everything in Belize. So as tourism goes, so goes the market. Now, as of August 15th, international airport's going to open back up. We're going to have some tourists coming in the market. However, they've got some restriction on them as far as their ability to go out and look at properties and navigate the island. A lot of those people will have to actually stay at their designated gold standard hotel where they will have to engage in activities, food, drink, etc. at that resort. If they go out on any excursions, they will have to go with approved private tours. And of course, there's other rules and regulations that are currently being manufactured to deal with the influx of tourists that will start as of August 15th. Of course, if you have any questions about that, ask me in the question and answer session coming up. Of course, if you're watching this on a after recorded version, please go ahead and hit me up at info@paradiseguy.com. So let's talk about the appreciation potential going forward. You know, the old adage of buy low, sell high works in any market. If you look historically at the Belizean market, it has always gone up and up and up and up. Now, 2008, 2009, when the market had its reset, so to speak, its global correction, well, this market here in Belize flattened out. Did it go down? No. Did some properties drop in value? Yeah, a few. But for the most part, the market just leveled out. But there was still tourism. If you look at the BTB, which is the Belize Tourism Board, and you look at tourism growth quarter after quarter, year after year, over the last 10 years, you'll see steady growth. This next reporting period, what you're going to see is it's going to drop significantly because tourism stopped. And that tourism is also going to affect appreciation values going forward. As a matter of fact, you may see a depreciation of those values, which again is going to create the opportunity for you, for me, for other investors that are going to come into the market. Pricing considerations. Like I said earlier, because of the lack of an MLS, a centralized database, it gives you access to an aggregated amount of data about the market. You don't know what a good price on a property is unless you understand the market. The only way to understand the market is to live, breathe, eat, and sleep in that marketplace. You have to know the people in the market. You have to know the stories behind each property. You have to understand what other properties have sold for. And again, there's no centralized database as of yet that gives you access to that data. So who you work with, which I'm going to talk with later, and how you work with that person are very important considerations. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about realistic values. What is a realistic value for a property? Every day, people contact me and they say, well, I've got this much to spend, or $100,000 to spend, or $1 million to spend, but I want the best value. Well, a property is always worth what somebody's willing to sell it for and what you're willing to buy it for. That's what really establishes value in any marketplace. However, in the markets in North America, what dictates that value is, of course, can you get a loan on that? And that means it has to appraise. Well, property here, because you're not getting a loan, does not have to appraise. So that means the seller can sit and decide, well, I want $1 million for my property. Yet the property next door, which is bigger or better, or maybe even the same, sold for a different price. Now, that's what we call a comparable, but guess what? The prices aren't comparable. So you have to establish, am I going to pay a fair price for this? And again, you have to ask yourself, what is it worth to you? The seller has to ask, how bad do I need the money and what am I willing to sell it for? But you also need an expert in the marketplace that can tell you, here's what I believe that property is actually worth, and here's the terms that I believe you should try to negotiate, and here's the pitfalls that I believe you should try to avoid, i.e., does it have a clear title? How long has it been on the market? What's the story behind the property? And of course, how maybe to get that property actually inspected prior to closing so you understand what's going on with the internal workings, plumbing, electrical, etc. You also need to be aware about, what was the permitting process? How big is the septic tank? How are they capturing water? How big is the cistern to capture that water? Lots and lots of things to consider. Again, that's why representation is so important. So let's talk about the effects to date. I've already touched on this a bit. Let's talk about the effects to date of COVID-19. Well, it's made people in the marketplace very, very, very cautious. There are lots of Belizeans locally that have said, you know what, we shouldn't open up the borders. We should keep the international airport closed, and we should not depend on tourism. We should revamp our economy so that it's not tourism driven. But if you take out tourism and you take out real estate from Belize, this place doesn't exist anymore. And that's just simply the way it is. Sure, we can export coconut water, We can export Marie Sharp's hot sauce, which is great. We can export, some other things that are available in Belize, Belizean hardwoods, for example. But this economy lives, breathes, eats, and dies because of the tourists and because of the real estate economy. So we have to figure out a way going forward as a country to keep that going. The country as a whole, I believe, acknowledges this, and that's why we're starting with a slow open August 15th of the country to let tourists come back in. Again, they'll be limited in what they can do, where they can go, and how that experience is going to be. But the goal is by November, which is typically our high season, November, December, January, that is typically when the market is really flooded with tourists. And historically, what's happened? All those tourists come in during that time, they fall in love with Belize, which, trust me, is easy to do. Great people, very friendly, English speaking, tax benefits, relatively affordable real estate market, great lifestyle, all these things that made me fall in love, made other people fall in love, and have kept this market going. Those things will happen. But the question is, by November, how many people will actually be booking those trips? How many people will actually be here when that high season hits? I believe it's going to be a decent season, but I believe next year, given that we continue to move forward with vaccines for COVID, that we figure out whether there is an immunity built up if you've had it, and you can get some sort of passport because of that. I believe there's lots of things that have yet to be determined. You can look at the cases in the United States, you look at fast testing. There's lots of considerations going on. So I don't have a crystal ball, but here's what I believe. I believe that the world population in general is only going to tolerate so much of this controlled, captive feeling lifestyle. And after that, they're going to be looking for other places to go. I'm getting contacted by more people than ever saying, I want to get out of the United States. And the reason for that is because of the political climate. This is what they tell me, their political climate, because of the way the general public is acting, i.e. some of the rioting, the looting, the social behaviors. If you look on Facebook these days, you'll notice the frustration. People are very political, people are very frustrated, people have opinions about masks, no masks, people have opinions about medical doctors and experts and diet and nutrition and everything you can imagine. But if you just notice Facebook, because I'm on there a lot, you'll notice that there's a general frustration level, and that's getting worse, not better. People are going to, at some point, I believe, want to take advantage of life again. And life does not mean hovering at home, hiding from a disease or a plague or whatever you want to call it, a virus out there, and not living life. If you look at all the other viruses out there that have come down the pipeline, heck, let's just use the flu as an example. Flu comes around every single year, kills a ton of people, and that's even with a vaccine. COVID, if they develop a vaccine, it's a mutating virus. So if it mutates, guess what? That vaccine may not work for next year's version. So guess what? We may be in the same situation as the flu, where there's a yearly vaccine. Some people will choose to take that, some people won't. But guess what? We're going to have to get back to life at some point. And when we do that, guess what? The economy, the global economy, as well as the economy in Belize, will definitely get its legs back under it. So this is going to take a little bit of time, but in the meantime, there is opportunity for people to speculate on the upside of that and buy when the market is at a low point. And the market is heading down. The market is settling into a lower point. How low will it go? I don't know, but you should definitely get your liquidity ready if you're interested in Belize, and get ready to educate yourself about the market, which again is what I'm here to help you do. And 3, when the right property comes along, take the right action, negotiate the right deal, make sure you're doing the right things along the way to protect yourself, and make sure you've got good representation. So, sorry to take so long on that first slide, but I wanted to lay a good foundation for what we're going to talk about. I hope you found that information useful. I hope you've got some questions for me at the end as we move along. So here we go. Let's move to the next slide. By the way, I didn't mention on that last slide, all real estate is transacted in US dollars. So when you come down or you're looking on the internet and you see a price, if you see a dollar amount on the website, what that means is US dollars. So there's a question you definitely don't need to ask. So let's talk about top tips on how to choose a real estate agent. Choosing a real estate agent in Belize is very different than choosing a real estate agent in the States. When I was a real estate agent for years and years and years in the States, every single year I had to do continuing education. I had to carry errors and omissions insurance. I had to maintain my license. I had to make sure that I maintained my designation as a realtor with the National Association of Realtors. Lots of hoops to jump through, very expensive, lots of education. So you knew that when you were dealing with me or somebody else in the States that was a realtor, you knew that they had a certain level of education, a certain level of experience, and that they had an ethics, a code of ethics. You see, if to be a realtor in the United States, you have a code of ethics that you agree to abide by. If you break that code of ethics, the Board of Realtors and or the Realtor Association can boot you out. They can take your license away from you. Well, let's talk about the current state of things in Belize. As of the recording of this event, there is no licensing in Belize for real estate agents. There is no training for Belize for real estate agents. There is no ethics board or ethics committee to monitor the activities of real estate agents. And there is no disciplinary committee for agents that do things that they're not supposed to do. So what does that mean? That means anybody can come into Belize. They can get a work permit. They can associate with a real estate company or start their own, and they can become a real estate agent. It doesn't matter if they were a chef. Doesn't matter if they're a taxi driver. Doesn't matter if they were a janitor. They can hang up their shingle and say, now I am a real estate expert in Belize. Come do business with me. And you know what? Very often that has happened. Now, I'm not saying there's not good agents in the marketplace, because there are. There's some with a lot of experience. There's some that do the right thing when they're supposed to. There are others that don't do the right things when they're supposed to. So buyer beware. And this goes for any market, any business transaction. When you come into a situation, you have to assess who you're doing business with. You have to assess their reputation. You have to assess their experience. You have to assess what they know about their market. And you also have to work with somebody that you know, you like, and you trust. So choose very carefully, ask a lot of questions, and make sure that you have the representation that's going to help you achieve your objectives for your lifestyle, achieve your objectives for your return on investment with whatever property you decide to buy. So we've covered a lot there. The main brokerages in Belize, let's talk about that. Are there big name brokerages in Belize? Yep. There's RE/MAX down here, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Keller Williams. I could go on and name some more. There's also a lot of local brokerages which you wouldn't know. There's one-man shops, there's five-man shops, but there are no major big offices in Belize. Generally, if you see 10 agents at an office, that's generally a pretty large office in the country. And a lot of these people, again, have no experience outside of Belize. They simply became agents in Belize. And the training programs that they have are almost non-existent. Literally, it's throw people in the deep end, and if they swim, they survive, and if they don't, they drown. So you want to make sure that, when you're dealing with a particular agent, the agent is always far more important than the brokerage that you're picking. So just because you choose RE/MAX because that's a global brand, or Coldwell Banker, or Keller Williams, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the best agent. I'm not saying that all those brokerage don't have great agents. Heck, Century 21 has some fantastic agents. But you've got to make sure that you choose the best person, the most qualified person, the most qualified professional to help you get done what you need to get done. So again, buyer beware. Ask a lot of questions, think things through, and don't be pressured. If somebody starts to pressure you, turn and walk the other direction, slow down, get your wits about you. And if you ever get told something in this marketplace and you're not sure if you're getting good information, hit me up at info@paradisesky.com and I will answer the question if I know the answer. And if not, I'll do the research to find out what the correct answer is because I don't want you to fall into some of the same pitfalls I fell into when I first came to Belize. Because I came into this market, I jumped in way too fast. I made investments. I gave money to people I shouldn't have. I lost a good amount of money because of that. If you ever want to hear my stories in person, I'd be glad to share that with you when I meet you sometime in Belize. All right, so let's talk about commissions and cooperation. This is a very important aspect of real estate in Belize. In the United States or Canada, we have what's called cooperation. It means if I get a listing in the United States, I immediately put that on the MLS, and every agent out there that's on the MLS, thousands, millions, however many there are, because it actually goes on realtor.com, which covers the entire country. So everybody in the country has access to that listing, which means theoretically, I've got an entire country helping to market and sell and get exposure for my listing. And that is good representation for my client. My client wants maximum exposure for their property. Here in Belize, there is no MLS. There is no functional board of realtors at this time, which has licensing, which has oversight, which has the ability to help you market your property. So the way properties are marketed here now, they're put on a website locally. Maybe they're updated, maybe they're left there for years, maybe they've already sold and they're still on that website. Maybe they're not even real listings. Because there's no oversight, no checks and balances on that, you don't know if what you're looking at on that website is real or not. And other real estate agents, when they go to sell a property, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at what they have listed and they're going to try to sell you what they've got. Here's the reason why. They believe, and this is very old school thinking, they believe that there's more money in selling the listing yourself and keeping all the commission to yourself rather than selling 5 times as many property and splitting that commission with another agent. That's what cooperation is all about. Let's sell more properties, make a little bit less, help other agents make some money, and let's sell more properties and better represent our clients. Doesn't that make sense? Well, we're working on that. I'm part of a team down here in Belize right now where we are working to push forward licensing. We're working to push forward education for the agents. We're working to push forward an MLS, a centralized database, whereby which this will actually happen in the future. Will it happen fast? No, because nothing ever happens fast in Belize. You have to be patient. But just know that it is in the works, and definitely behind that and working very hard to make that become a reality. Let's talk about exclusive agency representation. In the United States, when you sign an exclusive agency representation, a buyer representation agreement, you have that in your file. If another agent comes to you as the client and says, hey, fire your agent and come with me, they have actually violated the code of ethics and they can lose their license for that. Now, here in Belize, true story, I've actually been standing with my client in a showing. The other real estate agent is there showing me the property. And while they're standing there in front of me, they're telling the customer, you shouldn't work with him, you should work with me, right in front of me. And you know what? There is nothing illegal about that. Is it unethical? Absolutely. Does it still happen all the time? Absolutely. So I call that poaching. Know that no matter who you're working with down here, that if you run into another agent, it's very likely they're going to ask you to work with them rather than that agent. Agents get cut out of deals all the time, even though they've done a good amount of work to get things down the road. So just be aware of that. What I do with my clients is I do sign an exclusive agency agreement. And that exclusive agency agreement says that you will work with me through the closing process. And if not, there is a financial penalty for not doing so. And the reason for that is because, frankly, in the marketplace, I just got tired of seeing that all the time. I'm hoping it's a trend that catches on with everybody. I think every agent out there should have a buyer agency agreement with every client, because it's not a fun experience. When you work with somebody, you drive them around the island, you spend hours and hours researching property, you tell them everything that you know, and then they go do a deal with somebody else. So don't be that guy or gal, and make sure that if you want to work with me, we get a buyer agency in place. And if you're going to work with somebody else, make sure you stick with that person and do the right thing by them, as long as they're doing what they're supposed to for you and they're representing you the way that you need to be represented. All right, rules and restrictions as they pertain to foreign ownership. I get asked this all the time. Will, is there any restriction on me owning property in Belize? The simple answer to that is absolutely not. You can own property in Belize just like a Belizean citizen. There's no limit on the type or the number of properties you can buy, and you can hold fee simple title down here, again, simply the same way as a Belizean citizen. So that's good news. It's one of the things that makes our market popular. Another thing that makes the market popular is the fact that you pay for it in US dollars, and when you sell it, it's paid for in US dollars. It's easy to transact real estate in the country of Belize because all the contracts are written in English as well, and it's British common law down here. So the laws are similar to the laws that we're used to in the States and of course Canada. So let's talk about what regions to consider when you're going to invest. I had a gentleman contact me yesterday and he says, well, I want to invest in this region, frankly in Belize, that I'd hardly even heard of. I said, well, why do you want to invest there? And he told me, he said, well, the reason I want to invest there is because it's affordable and I want to make it a tourist destination. Okay, that's a really heavy lift because the tourist destinations in Belize are relatively well established, and they're established for the reasons. If you want the Mayan mountains and some ruins and little cooler temperatures and jungle and beautiful topography, you're going to go to San Ignacio. If you want something that's small, a little slow, yet has nice water, nice hotels, you may look at Placencia. If you are looking for something that's an island that may be the #1 tourist destination in all of Belize, you're going to look at Ambergris Caye. If you're looking for something close to that, similar, a little bit slower feel, you're going to look at Caye Caulker. If you're looking for something very affordable near the border of Mexico, so it's easy to jump back and forth across the border and shop and have a different experience, you're going to look at Corozal. So there's lots of different things to consider all around Belize. There's also different price points. Sure, you can find some great, cheap, affordable property out in the middle of the jungle with no road access. But is that the lifestyle you want to have? Is that the return on investment you want to have? So all these are considerations. Again, I'm here to educate you about all the different districts, what their values are, why you should invest there. But I can only advise you of that when I find out what your objectives are. I need to know what you want your life to look like. I need to know how close do you want to be to shopping. I need to know how close do you want to be to an airport. What about water taxi? What about excursions? Do you like to snorkel? Do you like to fish? What activities do you want to do? How often are you going to be there? Are you going to need a caretaker? Do you want to live in a condo? All of these are questions that I need answered to properly represent you so that you can get a place in the place that you want to live that's going to give you that lifestyle, give you that return on investment, and of course, be a price that you can actually afford. So let's talk about lagoon, mainland, and other areas around Belize as well. There's water all over Belize. Now there's generally 3 types of water. There is the Caribbean Sea with the reef, and that's beautiful. The reef, especially on Ambergris Caye, is very, very close to the island. You can be scuba diving or snorkeling in 5 minutes, really, really close by. But you can get there from anywhere else in Belize. Getting around Belize is not very hard. Heck, you can drive the entire country in 1 day. You can get around the entire island of Ambergris Caye on a boat in less than a day. You can get to Caye Caulker from Ambergris Caye in 20 minutes. So getting places in Belize is not very hard. You can get to the mainland from Ambergris Caye in an hour and a half by water taxi. So just know that getting places is not a real difficult thing or time consuming. But you have to understand, what does that do to the value of properties? If you are on the beach, no matter which beach you're on, that's going to cost more than if you're inland or if you're second row or third row from the beach. If you are on the lagoon, that's going to be a different price point as well, but a different lifestyle. See, on Ambergris Caye, for example, if you're on the lagoon side, you get sunset views. But if you're on the reef side, you get sunrise views. Now, I don't get up early enough most of the time to see a sunrise view, But I did, when I lived on the reef side, really enjoy seeing the waves breaking out on the reef. I did enjoy seeing the colors of the water and being able to snorkel and scuba dive off the end of a dock. I did enjoy the ability to kayak. I did enjoy the ability to go into town and catch the water taxi very easily. But then I moved back to the lagoon side of Ambergris Caye. The lagoon side, much more affordable, different lifestyle, very beautiful. Sunsets like you wouldn't believe, but also it's got dirt roads. So when I drive back to the lagoon side, I have to traverse some dirt roads. Sometimes they're muddy. On the front side, the roads are paved. On the front side, you've got a beach. On the back side, you've got different types of coastline. Most of it is covered in mangroves. And then, of course, you've got locations in between. So whether you're on the mainland, you're in the jungle, whether you're on mainland and you're on some inland river, or whether you're in the mainland, you're on a beach, all of those have different values associated with them. Again, I'm here to educate you about that. You can obviously do some research online to find out what areas preliminarily interest you. And again, I'm here to answer all those questions. Excuse me while I have a drink of water. All right, so let's talk about access to utilities. In Belize, lots of areas do not have utilities. So for example, the west side of Ambergris Caye, as of right now, does not have utilities. So people talk about Secret Beach and that area and wanting to live on the west side. If you're going to live over there, you're going to be off the grid for the time being. That means you're going to have to look at solar, maybe some wind power. You're going to have to look at cisterns, septic. All of these are considerations. Also, as of right now, there's only one road that traverses Ambergris Caye and goes east to west. And there is a north to south road that's slowly evolving as people develop out there on the beachfront. But that's mainly to give access to people that are doing hostels, hotels, motels, bars, and restaurants on the beach in the Secret Beach area. Do I believe that area has some potential for the future? I do. When? I don't know. There have been people investing out there for a long time. Some of them have done well on their investment. Do I think eventually that area is going to have utilities? Eventually it's going to develop? Yes. I think it's more of a speculative play at this point. But there are also some businesses that in the past years have done very well, but think about how they have done lately with no tourism. Certainly they've suffered. So if you're interested in affordability on Ambergris Caye and a lot with future value, talk to me about Secret Beach and or other lots that are undeveloped but have been surveyed and subdivided. Let's talk about lifestyle. Lifestyle in Belize is one of the things that attracts everybody. What do you like to do? When you talk to me initially, I want you to have a list of all the activities you think you'd like to do and all of the activities that you currently do. Are you somebody that's a retiree and just wants to simply sit by the pool, read a book, and relax? No problem. Do you want to go be near a beach? No problem. Do you want to be away from everything? Do you want to be in a central location near town? How far away from shopping do you want to be? What about medical care? How do you want to have access to medical care? You see, on Ambergris Caye, we don't have a true hospital. We have medical clinics, we have doctors, but a true hospital is only available on the mainland in Belize City. So these are considerations that you have to think about before you invest, things you need to educate yourself about. I did a previous webinar. You can watch the recorded version of it if you'd like. It's all about Belize. It's a Belize overview, and it talks about all these things about what about medical care, what about immigration, things that you need to know, again, prior to investing in the country. So if you'd like to watch that, please hit me up at info@paradisesky.com, and I'll tell you how you can do that. So ROI is the next thing we need to consider. Are you a cash flow investor? Are you looking for equity appreciation? Are you a lifestyle investor? Are you all three of those? If you are all three, guess what? That's a little bit harder property to find. I got people that come down here who say, you know what? I'm all about lifestyle. I don't care about return on investment. All I want is to live the lifestyle that I want to live. Find me this. And I go find them that. And that's great. They're happy. I have somebody that's going to close on a very nice property here in the next month or two, and they got exactly what they want, what the lifestyle they want. Is it going to provide much return on investment? Probably not in any short time, maybe in the long run, but they're going to get to live the lifestyle they want with their family, with their friends, and that was their goal. I've got other people who say, you know what, Will, I'm going to come down and spend 2 weeks there a year. The rest of the time, I want my property managed. I want it cash flowing, and I want it taking care of all its expenses and kicking off a little cash to me. Can you make that happen? Well, yes, in the past, I've been able to make that happen. We're in a new marketplace now, so we'll see how that evolves in the future. But definitely, I believe at some point in the future, that'll be possible yet again. Then there are the people that want to invest and say, I want the appreciation. So maybe I buy something pre-construction, something where that developer is needing money up front, and because that developer needs that money up front, I can buy at a lower price, and I'm going to get an instant bump of appreciation as that developer raises their prices, and once the project is finished and the price is raised yet again. That's called staged equity. When you look at that, that's a good way to buy, but here's the risk. In Belize, we have loads of developments that never get finished. And the reason why is because the developers run out of money or something happened. Right now, we've got a couple of good developments going on the island that have never even slowed down, even during COVID. And that's a good sign, because that means they've got the money to continue with or without sales. They aren't dependent upon your dollar to continue to finish that project. If you'd like more information about developments that I believe are strong and good opportunities to buy and get that staged equity play in the future, please hit me up at info@paradisesky.com, and I'll get right back to you with that information. So we've talked about that. Let's move on to our next slide. Talk about types of investments. There are different ways to buy in Belize. I've mentioned some of this a lot already, so I'm going to go over it again briefly. You can buy outright. You can do an all-cash purchase, and you're going to be able to negotiate the best deal possible with an all-cash purchase. Cash talks, and people who are selling want to get their money out. That's why they're selling. So the faster they can get their money out, the better price you're going to get. So keep that in mind when you're buying property, that cash is king. A lot of people come to the island, and I recommend this for a lot of people. Come here and rent for 6 months. Get a property, rent, get a feel for the market, learn what kind of lifestyle you're really going to live here. See if you want to even stay. Belize isn't for everybody. A lot of people come down, they get infatuated. I actually did a video a while back called Island Lust, because people come down, they fall in lust, and they buy something very, very quickly, and a year later their property's on the market and they're heading back home because it wasn't what they imagined. You come down and you visit, and Belize becomes this fantasy. There's a honeymoon period when you show up, when you just, the people are perfect, everything you do is fantastic, everything's novel, everything's new. It's like a new relationship. Have any of you ever been in a relationship where you meet the person, and for the first 6 months, they can't do anything wrong? You're completely infatuated with them. They're just the best thing you've ever known or been with? Yes. But you know what? After that, you really get to know them, and they really get to know you. And you start to see them for who they really are. Well, Belize is no different. There's a honeymoon period down here, and after you get to know Belize and understand Belize, see how things really work, see the true cost of living, see how your investments perform, see how the expat community behaves with each other, see how many people come and see how many people leave. All these things are good things to notice when you're investing. And the more you know, again, the better you're going to be able to invest and strategize for your future in Belize. Let's talk about the different models for investing. You can come down here and you can do the easiest investment there is, which is you can buy a condo in an operating resort or hotel, and you can come down and spend 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 weeks at that resort in your condo per year. The rest of the time, that condo is going to be managed by the resort. It's going to be rented out for you. It's going to be maintained. It's going to be cleaned. You're not going to have to worry about anything. They're just going to take that money and put it into a bank account for you, and you can leave that down in Belize for you to use when you come down here, or you can have that transferred back to the States, or you can buy that unit and you can lock it and you can leave it and not do anything with it and not worry about the cash flow, and you can use it whenever you want. If you're going to get a condo and you're going to put it in a rental pool, very often that has some restrictions on use, and very often that has restrictions on decorating the inside of that unit. Many times it will restrict you from changing the furnishings and or artwork and or the dishes in the counter, but you have to know these things going in. So if you have an interest in that model, contact me and I'll give you some options of different projects out there, and I'll tell you what their rules, what their regulations are around them. The next thing is to invest in a freestanding unit. Let's say you buy something on the beach, it's a freestanding home, it's got its own pool, it's a beautiful unit, and you come down and you want to stay there 6 months out of the year, and the rest of the time you're going to Airbnb it. Well, what you should know is that you're going to need a hotelier's license. That's one thing. 2, you're going to need a manager, a keeper of your property when you're not there. If not, things might go missing, or somebody might decide to live in it while you're gone. So you never want to leave your property unattended, and you're going to have to pay money for that caretaker to be at your property. You're going to have to also provide a place for them to sleep. You may also have to provide an allowance for their food and drink. You may also have to provide transportation. These are all considerations to think about when you're going to do that. If you're going to buy a piece of land and you're going to build on it, this is another consideration. People say all the time, well, I'm going to buy a piece of land, Will, and when I build on it, I'm just going to hire a contractor down there to build on it, and I'll come down and check on it once in a while. Well, that's not going to work out too well. And I'm not saying anything negative about any contractors here, but some have been known to borrow permanently building materials. Some have been known to build things improperly because they weren't being properly supervised. There is a building right up the road from where I live that was built, and I watched the owner of that property sit out in front of it every single day for years while his property was being built. And it's one of the most beautiful properties I've ever seen built as a single family home on the island. But the reason why is because this gentleman was there supervising everything, and he made sure there were no miscommunications. He made sure the money flowed properly. He made sure that the supervisors and the supervisees were properly watched over, and he made sure his materials were not borrowed permanently. So that turned out extremely well. So if you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to buy and I'm going to build, I would say you need to have somebody on the ground that you really, really trust watching that project for you, and or be down here yourself and be very, very participatory in that process. So keep that in mind depending upon what your strategies are. Let's talk about land banking. A lot of people come to Belize. There's a gentleman on the island who I won't name, but let's just say he's been very, very successful over the years. He came down to Belize years ago and he bought loads and loads of land. Everything he could find, he bought, and he sat on it, and sat on it, and sat on it, and sat on it. And then when the timing was right, when the market indicators said, hey, tourism is heading up, more airlines are flying here, more expats are coming here and living, the real estate market is trending upward, price pressure is trending upward, everything is trending upward. At that point in time, he decided to start to subdivide those properties and sell those lots off. He even offered financing. As a result of that, did very, very well. Other people have imitated that model and done very well as well. Will that model still work today? I believe any model will work today as long as you have the patience for that. If you're going to go into any sort of a speculative model like that, you have to have patient money and you have to be able to afford to sit on whatever you invest. If you'd like to know how to put together a model like that, let me know and I'd be glad to help you out with that. There are also people that come down here and do what are called syndications, meaning they get a exemption from the SEC saying that they are not selling a unlicensed security, and they bring in investors, and investors fund projects. I can help you do that as well. I can help you with the legal counsel to get that properly formed, and I can also help you identify the project to do that with, and also I can help you with the marketing to make sure that that gets out there and is put out there in a way that doesn't violate your Reg D exemption and any other exemptions that you may need to get as part of that. But I can show you how to participate in those that already exist in Belize as well. So if there's a project out there and it is being syndicated, we can look over that paperwork, we can look over the filings, we can look over the executive summaries, etc., and make sure the private placement memorandum, and make sure that it's put together in the right way and that it's got some sort of safety measures in it so that you can not lose your money. So if you'd like to know more about that, of course, hit me up as well. Let's talk about titles. Like I said earlier, you can get your title, fee simple titles in Belize. If you're going to go with a condo, very often those are strata titles. You can buy shares in a corporation and own shares of a corporation, and that is your ownership to a property. You can own a property via strata title. You can own property via fee simple title, where you actually own the land underneath it as well. All those titles are available. You need to find that out up front before you buy a property so you know how to proceed. Legal counsel, as you're going through this as well, when it comes to title, is very good to have. I always say that part of your closing cost is going to be your legal expense. That's generally 1 to 2% of the purchase price. We'll talk more about stamp tax and closing costs later on. Let's talk about Airbnbs. Everybody wants to come down to Belize and they say, well, I'm going to buy a place, I'm going to come and stay once in a while, and then I'm going to Airbnb it out the rest of the time. Like I mentioned previously, that's going to require, you're going to have a housekeeper, you're going to have maintenance, you're going to have somebody watching the property, you're going to have a hotelier's license, you're going to have to figure out what taxes are going to be due on that. So it's doable. It is, in the past, been profitable. Will it be profitable in the future? I believe so. When? I don't know exactly, but it's a consideration. If you're looking at that model or you're looking at an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast, please hit me up and let's talk further about that, because there's a lot to learn about that before you pull the trigger. All right, researching properties. Very often I get contacted by people who've been on the internet. They're doing lots of research on properties, or so they think. And they send me some URLs to various properties that they found. They're like, oh my gosh, I found this condo and it's on the beach and it's $100,000. Well, what they don't know is that that condo was sold 5 years ago and that the property is no longer for sale, but that property has just been sitting out there on the internet. There are a lot of dead listings out there that are not accurate, and there are also a lot of listings out there that frankly just don't exist on the internet, and they're meant to get you to call and to get you to become a prospect and or a customer of whatever agents may be doing that. Because there's no oversight, again, that happens quite frequently. Unfortunately, it wastes a lot of people's time, because when you call me and you say, hey, we'll go look at that property, and I go look at it and find out that that property is not for sale, I'm wasting my time, you've already wasted your time, and maybe I'm even wasting that agent or that brokerage's time, because that property is no longer even on the market. Or maybe I'm even calling the homeowner, and the homeowner saying, I don't even own that property anymore. So if you have any questions about any properties, if you send me a quick link, most of the time I'm familiar with what's on the market and what's not on the market, and very often I can respond quickly and tell you, yeah, that property is available or not available, or here's the story behind it, or here's the real price of it, or here's why you should look at or shouldn't look at it. So again, here to be your resource to do that. Go ahead and keep doing your research online if you'd like, but the quickest way to find a property, contact me or a reputable agent that you feel good about and have them do research. But beware, if they start showing you just the properties that they have listed, they're doing you a disservice. You want to see properties that are on the market or off the market. Many of the properties that you'll find in Belize, the best deals you'll find are actually not even on the market. They're just always for sale. Once you get your feet in this marketplace and you know people and you talk to people, you find out that Joe's cousin's brother's uncle has a place that he's looking to sell and he'll take this much for it, but that property never pops on the market. And if you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, you have first shot at that property. So networking is very, very important as well. Obviously, I can help you do that. Visits and walkthrough. There's nothing that's going to substitute for you being on the ground in Belize and walking through a property. I can walk through a property, I can take pictures for you, I can walk through a property and videotape it. We can even have somebody do a inspection, so to speak, of the property and tell you about it. But that's not going to substitute for you walking around that property, seeing what the road's like coming up to it, seeing what the beach or the land around it's like, seeing what the neighbors or the neighborhood feels like, seeing what the inside is like, whether the appliances all work, what the inside of the oven looks like, what the flooring's like, are there cracks in the wall, do the ACs work, do the fans work, do they make noise, do the doors close right? I mean, there's so much to know about these properties. Being there in person really is of great value. That's why I've always encouraged people to come down to Belize, see for yourself when at all possible. Let's talk about, well, frankly, that's all I have to talk about as far as researching properties. I've covered it all kind of repetitively. If you have any questions about any property, though, please do contact me and let me be your eyes and ears, and let me do some research and let me find out what the story really is on that particular property before you waste too much time and effort. All right, there's different factors. Again, some of this is repetitive, but repetition is the mother of skill, as Tony Robbins says. So I'm going to tell you things over and over. Hopefully that sinks deeper into your subconscious and you start to act in ways that are going to serve you in getting what you want and getting the deals the way you want them. You're always going to look at price. Price is always the first consideration. It's what attracts people to properties. Location, obviously another consideration. So if you find something that meets your price, that is in the location you desire, guess what? Very, very desirable. But you also want to consider things like when you're not there, or if you can't be there, what is the rental income potential of that property? You got to figure that out. You also want to know, is this going to be something I'm going to hold free and clear, or am I going to have debt service? If I'm going to have debt service, what kind of debt service am I going to have? What does the property have to do in order for me to cover that debt service? And if it doesn't cover it, can I afford to cover that debt service? Title searches are incredibly important here, but we don't have title companies per se the way we're used to them in the United States, where they do all the research, they guarantee free and clear title. Down here, we have people that do research for you. Lawyers can do that for you. Some real estate agents can do that for you. Some people have other people that are very skilled at doing researches at the lands department on titles. But you do need to make sure that you have a free and clear, unencumbered, non-clouded title to a property. There have been horror stories down here, not very often, but sometimes properties have been sold more than once to different buyers. Sometimes properties have been sold and the owners have never gotten title. Lots of things to know around titles. Just yesterday, it was announced that the central bank has now changed its policy back to where central bank approval is now not required when properties are transacted in certain ways. It used to be dependent on whether it was expat to expat, local to local, or expat to local, and there were different rules around each. Needless to say, it backlogged the entire system and it made getting to closing very cumbersome sometimes, and it took time and cost money to get it there. So they are revamping that, modifying that, which we're all very excited for. It's going to make transactions easier again to get to the finish line, and that's a benefit to you. So when it comes time to transact a property, let's find out, are we going local to local? Are we going expat to expat? Are we going from expat to local? And what does that mean to you as far as closing costs? And what does that mean to you as far as time to closing? What condition is the property in? Well, every property's got a story, like I said. What is the age of the property? Who built it? What's the construction quality like? Did they use the right type of footings? Did they go all the way to the bedrock? Did they raise the property to the appropriate levels? What's it like during rainy season? You have to know about the story of the property and how it handles all these factors before you buy it. Again, that's the proper research you need to do. Is it a condo, which is maintained by a homeowners association, or is it freestanding and you're responsible for everything yourself? You have to factor in those costs. Is it a piece of land that you're going to buy? Is it below grade, meaning Is it flooded? Is it marshy? Does it have mangroves on it? If it has mangroves on it, can you get a permit to remove those mangroves? If so, what's that going to cost? When you clear that land, what's that going to cost? When you fill that land to raise it up so that it doesn't flood anymore, what's that going to cost? When you get the architect, oh, by the way, which architect are you going to use to give you the plans? Who are you going to use? You see, you don't want to use an architect from the States because their plans won't be able to be read by the people down here in Belize because they build differently in Belize. There's different codes and different methods they use to build down here in Belize. So you're going to want to have it designed by a local architect if you're going to build. You're going to want to have the right contractor that is trustworthy and knows what they're doing. You're going to want to have adequate supervision over that project, and you're going to want to make sure you control the money and the costs around that as well. Let's talk about financing. Well, financing is coming up on the next slide, so we'll talk more about that. But again, generally speaking, you can get owners to finance property on here. There is developer financing on some projects as well. If you wanted some information on that, contact me and I'm happy to give that to you. But remember, no MLS. So there's no MLS for me to go out and find every property that is sold in the neighborhood in the last 6 months under $250,000. Simply can't do that. Now, I may know people who know people and with some research and some time be able to find out some generalized data. I may know somebody at the lands department that can go down and tell me in that neighborhood what is sold in the last year, but that's work, that's money, that's time, and it's not something that is easily done like we're used to in the States. All right, so more considerations about financing. Again, some of this redundant. Owner will carry, I've already covered. Sometimes it's called seller financing. Bank financing, it occurs once in a while, very rarely, especially to expats, not really available. It's more for actual citizens of Belize. There's some financing there. When and if it does happen, they're going to want 40 to 60% down, and they're going to charge between 8 and 14% interest on that. So those are what you can be used to. If it's going to be bank financing, again, some owner will carries will come as low as 5%. It just depends upon who the seller is, how motivated they are, what price you're paying for the property. Obviously, you're willing to pay more for the property, they're going to give you better terms. Let's talk about developer financing. There's one development in Belize right now that I know of, at least, where the developer actually owns the bank. As a result of that, guess what? They're offering traditional financing. This is a great selling point because it makes it easy to qualify, and it also makes it easier to buy. So it's easy to help people buy a project like that because it's more traditional like you're used to in the States. If you'd like to find out what project that is, please hit me up. I'm happy to pass that information along to you. So let's talk about syndications again. I told you syndications are where you get a group together. It has to be mostly accredited investors. These accredited investors means they have a net worth of over $1 million, not including their primary residence. There is a small percentage of people that can participate in that syndication that can be non-accredited. So it just depends upon the deal. We have to look at all the documents. We have to look at the timing of everything. We have to look at the executive summary. We have to look at the private placement memorandum. Again, I have some experience in this. If you have any questions about putting together a deal like that and or participating in a syndication, please let me know. There are also hard money options. You can look at getting hard money loans. Hard money loans, as in the States, are quite expensive. You can pay a higher rate and be very short-term money, generally under a year. So be aware of that. The best way for you to come down to Belize, like I said before, is with cash. Refinance your home at home. Sell your home at home. Sell your property at home. Get liquid. Pool your cash. Bring that to Belize. And then you're going to be able to negotiate the best deal you possibly can. You can do that refinancing, or what we call a home equity line of credit. You can also form partnerships. You form a general partnership, everybody invests a little, and you come down and you invest together. I can advise you of good lawyers to contact about the formation of those business entities and to help advise you on how to structure the money in a deal like that. There's also lease to own. Now, these aren't real common, but there are properties down here where you can go in, you can lease and have that be a lease to own, whereby your lease payments actually accrue towards a down payment and the eventual purchase of that property. If you'd like to do something like that, Those, again, are further and farther between, but I can put you in my database, and when a deal like that comes along, I can certainly let you know about it. One of the most important things you can do is become part of my database and give me your needs analysis of what you're looking for, when you're looking for, so that when a deal comes across my desk and it fits your needs, you pop up and it tells me, call Joe in the States because Joe is looking for a property just like this. And when I do that, you're going to be first one to have the opportunity to buy that property, and that's going to be good for you and, of course, great for the seller. There are barter deals down here. There are people that come down and trade properties for properties, trade items for properties. Bartering is a real thing. So if you want to get involved with that, I'm not real involved in bartering for properties, but if that's something you want to do, I just want you to know that it does exist. And then, of course, there's offshore financing. It's a little bit more complicated. I won't get into all the details of that. If you're a sophisticated, savvy investor and looking at bigger deals, we can talk about that in your consultation after this webinar. Did you know that you can invest your IRA or 401k in real estate in Belize? It's true. Most people don't know about this. It requires certain things. These are retirement accounts, so they have to be converted into the right form, which I can connect you with somebody who's an expert in this and does this for all the time. And once it's converted in the right form and you have a custodian who is directing your retirement funds, meaning you're not directing those retirement funds, your custodian is. See, this is very similar to what we called a 1031 exchange back in the States. A 1031 exchange allowed me to sell a property, identify a new property, have that money never touch my hands, be transferred into buying a new property, and no capital gains as a result of that because I never realized that gain. It's called a 1031 tax deferred exchange. Well, this is a similar concept using your retirement funds. You're going to hire a custodian. They're going to take your money. They're going to invest it in something in Belize for you. You're never going to touch that money. And your IRA or your 401k or whatever is going to realize that gain. You're not going to realize that gain. And you're not going to benefit, meaning you're not going to stay in that property. So you can come down and you can do checks on that property. And while you're checking on that property, you can stay at it. And you can make sure everything is working all right and everything's doing okay. Nothing wrong with that. But you just can't live in it. And you certainly can't spend extended vacation time at that property. But you can do an investment property with your retirement funds. If you're interested in that, let me know. I'll connect you with somebody who's a real expert at that, helps people do it all the time. And then when you have that done, we'll take that budget and I'll help you find whatever it is that you want to find to meet your investment objectives. So let's talk about the rental market. Like I said, people are always very surprised when they talk to me, and they've talked with other real estate agents before me, and all the other real estate agents are like, hurry, you have to buy now, hurry, you gotta buy now, buy. And buy what I have, don't buy what everybody else has, buy what I have. And people get frustrated with that because they feel pressured and they feel like they're not seeing all the inventory that the market has to offer. Well, I wanna make sure you see all the inventory that the market has to offer. I want to cooperate with all the other agents in the market. I want to make sure that you get what you want, and I want to make sure you understand the market that you are buying in. So one of the best ways to do that is to actually come down and rent for a while. So you can come down and you can rent for 6 months, a year, 3 months, however long is right for you. But during that time, you can figure out what type of property you want to buy, what you want to do with that property, what area you want to live in, and why. And you can figure out even if you want to stay. So I highly recommend renting a property. If you want to do that, I can help you find a great property to rent, and or I can refer you to somebody who can find you a great property to rent, depending upon which area of the country you're going to be in. But there are great rental availabilities right now. And the reason for that is because there are lots of people that are holding property right now that have not had income as a result of Airbnbs or not had income as a result of tourists coming into the area. So they're very, very motivated to get the properties rented. So let's talk about utilities, security deposits, and unexpected expenses. Utilities in Belize tend to be quite expensive. Now, I talked about this a lot in detail in my previous webinar, my Belize overview. If you'd like to hear more about that, you can go back and watch that one. But just as a general note, electricity and water in Belize tend to be a bit expensive. This is why we have rain catchment, meaning we have cisterns. When that water hits your roof, it runs down, it runs into a cistern. You save that, you use that water for, all your gray water in your place, so to speak, for flushing the toilet, for taking showers, for washing dishes, and other things in the house that don't require drinking water. Now, electricity in Belize, the way we get it is we bring it in from Mexico, so we import that. So Mexico has their price, they mark it up, they sell it to Belize. Belize then marks it up and sells it to you. So if you're going to come to Belize, you're going to run your AC all the time. You're going to have very big utility bill. My first utility bill when I first moved to Belize was $1,400 US. Needless to say, I learned to open my windows and let the wind come through my place. And I learned to only run my AC for a couple hours at night. And I learned to sleep with a sheet over me rather than a down comforter. So you will adjust to a lifestyle down here, or you will know firsthand exactly what your expenses are going to be when it comes to utilities. And when you do, you'll either accept that or you'll adjust your lifestyle. Security deposits. Security deposits, generally when you come down and you rent, they're going to ask for first month's rent. Some people ask for first and last month's rent, plus first month's rent as well. If you do that, make sure the contract is drafted appropriately. Don't just sign anything that's put in front of you. Have it reviewed either by an attorney or by a real estate agent that has a lot of experience with contracts. You may or may not know this, but I was a landlord for many, many years in my life. I've written a lot of contracts. I've signed a lot of contracts as far as rentals go. If you'd like me to review that for you, happy to take a look at that for you and make sure that you're signing something that's going to make sure you get the best deal possible and is fair to both parties. Let's talk about precautions and safeguards. Obviously, precaution is never, ever, ever rent something sight unseen. I had a client a few months back. She found something down here sight unseen. She got excited. She was in that island lust phase. She rented it. COVID hit. She couldn't come down. She canceled that lease. She lost her security deposit and that first month's rent. It's tragic. It's tragic. And there are many other people that have put deposits down on properties who have lost them because they didn't have proper escrow agents, third-party escrow agents. So if you're going to put money down on anything, make sure you know who's holding that money, what your recourse is if they don't give that money back, where that money is being held, and of course I'm here to advise you on how to do that and of course how not to do that. Selling properties in Belize. Selling properties in Belize is interesting. Generally, in the United States, what we used to do, we'd go and give a listing presentation, or we'd sit down with a seller and we would tell them all the things we were going to do to sell their property. And I mean, it was pages and pages and pages of things that I and or my fellow agents were going to do to market and sell their property and give them maximum exposure. Here in Belize, you really don't get that. What you get is you get an agent who says, yes, I'll sell your property, I'll put it on my website, I'll send it out to my database, and I'll tell people about it. But you know what? There are so many other ways that properties can be marketed. This is why we're pushing hard for the MLS. This is why you work with people that have big databases that they can hit up. And I mean databases of people that are actually interested in Belize. One of my advantages as an agent in Belize is that I talk with people all the time that are looking to buy property in Belize. So those people have access to me, and the people that are selling have access to me, being able to push those properties back and forth. Now, I'm not saying other people don't have databases. There are others that do as well. I'm not saying you have to work with me, you don't. You can pick whoever you feel best about. But I am saying that if you work with me, that is one of the advantages that you have, is that my marketing reaches lots of people through lots of different mediums. And of course, my marketing also attracts a lot of people that are looking for properties, maybe like the one you're selling. I told you limited exposure, limited cooperation, no MLS, again, no licensing disciplinary committee for agents. Something else that you need to know, there's no capital gains or inheritance taxes in Belize. So I talked about tax benefits before. When you go to sell your property, you don't have to worry about capital gains here in Belize or inheritance taxes. You're gonna have to worry about whatever that means for you in the United States or in Canada. Talk with your tax counsel and or legal counsel in the United States or Canada about what it means there. But here in Belize, no capital gains, no inheritance taxes. Moving money back and forth between the United States too is a ebb and flow situation. It used to be really easy, then it got really hard. Supposedly they're making it easier again, but there are strategies and techniques for moving money back and forth between the states that I can help you with. So when it comes time to move money, either to Belize or from Belize back to the States, make sure you talk to me about that and I'll help you out. So let's talk about purchasing or selling land. Excuse me while I put on my old man glasses here so I can see. Payment for the transfer of land, buildings, and or what is that? What does that say? Hereditary. Oh my goodness.
Legal terms.
I'm not trying. This is obviously not in my writing on here. This is from the government website. So, read this slide. And just know that what I talked about earlier, the central bank has changed the rules again. When the central bank changed the rules again, they have made things now easier for transactions to take place. I'm laughing at this slide because I obviously didn't make this one. If you have any more questions about this specifically, I will send you in layman's terms exactly what has come out in the last 24 hours in regards to central bank and what it means to buy and selling, closing costs, etc. And we'll go ahead and move on to this slide because I'm not going to talk about this slide. All right, commercial residential development. Let's talk about the pros and cons. Pros and cons of commercial development. The pros is you don't have to develop it yourself. It's being done preferably by somebody that has the money, the wherewithal, the investors to get it done. The cons, it's being done by somebody who does not have the wherewithal to get it done. So it'll either get done or it won't get done. Another situation is it'll get done whenever it gets done, or maybe not in the time frame that you're expecting. Many people have come to Belize, they've invested their money, they've expected for a property to be done in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and 8, 9, 10 years later, still not done. Many properties will tell you it's fully funded. Well, there's properties out there that have been fully funded, but then the bank pulled their credit line and it was no longer fully funded. Or the investors backed out, or lawsuits happened. So buying a property before it's done has its potential gains, but it also has things that can be risks. And you just need to navigate that, and that's why you need to know the story. Who's the developer? What are their resources? What's their track record? How long has the property been being built? Go out and watch the construction crews. How many people are on the construction crew? I mean, if there's 5 people a day on the construction crew, or there's 100, which project are you going to have more faith in? What sort of deadlines have they met already? What are their what is their recourse with their development team if the development team doesn't meet their goals for and timelines? So all these are considerations. You need to also keep in mind insurance and legal requirements. What are your insurance requirements in Belize? Obviously, you're going to want to insure your property. We have great insurance down here. It's called All Perils. When it says all perils, it means it covers fire, covers robbery, covers wind damage, covers hurricanes, covers floods, covers whatever happens to that property. All perils are covered. insurance is relatively affordable down here. It's a good thing to keep in mind, but you need to go with a reputable company. If you need an example of some reputable companies to deal with, I can give you a couple names and you can go and talk to them. I also know some good representatives that you can talk to as well that can tell you, what to insure, in what amounts to insure, and what it's going to cost you. As I spoke to you earlier, some of the biggest pitfalls down here are not supervising construction and or the development of your project. If you just give your money and you walk away, your project may never get done. There are stories of many people that come down to Belize and invest in their money and have either lost it or are still waiting for their project to be built and or their place to be built. So keep that in mind as you're investing your money. Buyer beware always. You also have to check into the availability of utilities. If you're going to have to bring utilities to your property, you have to understand what the time frame for that's going to be, what the costs for that are going to be. If you're going to do solar, what the cost for that is going to be. Who are the providers that can even do that for you? What type of equipment are they using down here? Is it the latest, greatest? If you want to bring equipment down from the States, what are the costs going to be for that? What are the import fees are going to be to bring that stuff into the country? You need to understand what types of financing are available, whether it's developer financing, whether it's owner financing, or whether it's actual bank financing. There is no OSHA, Occupational Safety Hazard, Safety Health and Hazard Association. I think that's what it stands for. In the United States, if you see a job site down here in Belize, sometimes you'll see hard hats, sometimes you'll see safety lines hooked onto things, sometimes you'll see real scaffolding. Other times you're going to see sticks and boards, no safety-toed shoes, no helmets. You're going to see things being built one bucket at a time, pouring cement. Other times you're going to see pump trucks and cement trucks and real scaffolding and real organized construction sites. These are things you need to know about. They're going to affect the quality of construction. They're going to affect the time of construction when you come down. So make sure that these are things you know about before you buy and do your research. If it's too good to be true, if it's too good of a bargain, it probably is too good to be true. So there was a development on the mainland where $130 million was basically stolen from people. And these people really believed in the project, very large project on the mainland. They invested their hard-earned money. They had a great sales pitch. They were doing advertising all over North American television. They had teams of people selling on the ground. They had some things built. They had a lot of land cleared. They talked about hospitals. They talked about marinas. They talked about parks and golf courses and everything else you can, airports, etc. And that money was just being methodically stolen from people. Don't get into a situation like that. I had clients that had come to me who had asked me about it. They said they were going down to take a look at that development. I strongly advised them to stay away from it. They went and they put their hard-earned money into it. And now they're caught up in the courts trying to see if there's any way, shape, or form for them to ever see any of that money again. And now they can't buy anything in Belize. So again, I'll tell you over and over, you're going to hear it. It's a recurring theme. Proper representation, know your market, know your lifestyle, know your desired ROI, and make sure that you're double checking, triple checking information to make sure you're getting the right story. All right, let's talk about commercial and residential development. If you come down here and you want to be in the development game, you got to figure out how is it going to work for you. Development is a very profitable game down here if you can pull it off. If you can get to the starting line and get properly funded, and then you can get to the finish line, meaning you've sold your properties off and or you've developed them to the finish and or you're renting them out and holding them. That's what you have to keep in mind. Getting properly funding has to be first and foremost, but after that you have to consider, can I get environmental approval for my project? Can I get the building permits that I need? Can I get the construction crews that I need to do what I want? What is the availability of the supplies? I know one developer who found this out the hard way. He was going to build. He hired his construction crews, got everything lined up, and then he went to order all his materials to start the job. And guess what? Those materials were not available at that point in time, and he had to delay everything for 6 months. Here's how he solved that problem. He started to then buy his products that he's going to need for construction, and he warehoused them so that whenever he wanted to do construction going forward, he had all the materials on hand. So again, these are strategies that you can only learn after going through experience and or dealing with a professional on the ground that's seen these experience and or learned them from other developers who've learned that the hard way. Let's talk about architects. You're going to have to hire the right architect that's going to draw up plans that can be read by a local contractor, and go with somebody who has experience. Look at their past projects. Go and look at their projects that have actually come out of the ground and been built, and see how things have gone. Don't skimp. Don't go with the cheapest house plans you can find. There are many people out there that can say they'll draw you up house plans cheaply. If you need to go that expensively on your house plans, you're probably going to run out of money on the way to getting it completed anyway. That's why we look around Belize and we see so many projects that are partially built, because people run out of money. So make sure that you're planning for cost overruns. Make sure you're planning for time delays. Make sure you're planning for contractors not doing what they say at the price they say they're going to do it. You just have to account for things going to cost a little bit more than they say they are. Don't always go with the contractor that tells you what you want to hear. People contact me all the time and they say, "Well, what does it cost per square foot to build something down there?" I'm like, "Well, $100 a square foot or less to $1,000 a square foot. Depends upon who you're having build it, how long it takes, what kind of construction methods, what the finish qualities are." So go with proven entities. Again, I can guide you to people that I know are reliable, that do good work, and there you'll have the best chance of having a good experience spending your budget as you see in the front of the project, the same way in the back of it. All right, let's talk about labor laws and zoning. Zoning in Belize doesn't truly exist. You can put a beauty salon on the bottom floor of your house in a residential area. You can build commercial on the bottom floor, and you can live above in town. So mixed use in Belize is very, very common. Know that you can pretty much do what you want, when you want, where you want. Of course, you're going to still have to get permits and approval. It's generally not too much of a problem. But there are labor laws in Belize as well. Labor law, if you employ somebody and then you lay them off, there are severance packages and other labor considerations you have to keep in mind. So before you come down and plan on employing people, especially on a construction site, if you're going to act as your own general contractor, make sure you do your research into labor laws. Also understand there are qualifications and or licensing to be a contractor as well. Septic and cisterns. Most places, if they're not built near town, are going to be on septic. They're going to require cisterns, which is what we use to capture the water to use. Those cisterns, because properties are not connected up to city water in a lot of cases, especially the farther out from town they are going to require rain catchment. Plus, rain catchment is also going to keep your water bills down, even if you are connected to the local water source. So make sure you learn about that. Make sure you get environmental to give you approval of that before you build. Make sure that's signed off on. If you're going to do solar or off-the-grid development, make sure that is approved as well, and make sure whoever you're going to have install that is going to do it in a way that environmental is going to approve of as well. Excuse me while I get a drink of water. All right, some of this is again sounding a little redundant here, but construction costs and options, commercial versus residential. If you're building something with one or both of those, the costs are obviously going to vary. Commercial costs, if you're just going to build a shell and maybe a tenant's going to come in and do the finish for you to build the suit on the inside, that's one way to do it. You can do the finishes inside. You can do leases in different ways, depending upon how you're going to use that commercial space. Residential, depending upon the finishes you're going to use, is going to have different costs. So you're going to have to decide what kind of lifestyle you're going to want, what sort of clientele you're appealing to, depending upon how you're going to use the property. If you're going to go for a low budget hostel type of a finish, obviously that's going to be very different than a resort 4-star, 5-star type of a finish. So you'll have to keep that in mind with furnishings. We do have suppliers down here in Belize that can supply very high level furnishings for resorts. So if you'd like those connections, I can certainly hook you up with them. And that way you don't have to import everything yourself from the States, which can have high amounts of duty and or shipping charges. There are insurance and legal costs, of course, with development. There are closing costs when it comes to land acquisition, which you're going to need to be aware of. General contractors will vary in cost greatly. You'll find some that'll say they'll do it for, X amount, let's say $20,000 for the project. You'll have other contractors that'll say they won't do it for under $300,000. Which one's better? I don't know. Maybe if you use the low-priced one, in the end you end up paying the same because they keep telling you, oh, we ran into this snag and this snag and this snag, and I need more materials and I need more labor and I need more this and more that. Cost overruns are very common, but maybe with the more expensive one, you get a cost guarantee. Maybe you also get a time frame guarantee. Maybe there are penalties if they don't finish the project on time. Again, these are all things to write into the contract when you're negotiating. I can certainly help you do that and pick the right contractors off the bat to start to deal with initially so that you have less issues going forward. Materials, sourcing and importing, I already mentioned that. You're going to want to source as much materials locally as you can. Importing materials can be done and it makes for some very nice builds, but it is going to drive up the cost of your construction, which you're then going to have to pass on to your buyers, and or you're going to have to work into your future rents. Just something to keep in mind as you're moving forward. You're going to have equipment that you're going to need to use. Are you going to import that equipment? Are you going to ship it over from the mainland to an island on a barge? Are you going to rent that equipment? Is your construction company going to take care of all that themselves? Is that worked into their price? You need to keep that in mind. You're going to have utility costs during construction. That's expensive here, so you're going to have to factor that in. You're going to have to pull permits. Permits are going to take some time. Permits are going to cost some money. You need to figure out what are those costs going to be, what are the time frames going to be for those permits to actually be pulled. When the inspector comes out and inspects and gives you that permit, how much of a delay in your construction time is that going to cause? Are there going to be any disputes with your title on your land? I've seen construction projects come to a halt because somebody raises a flag at the lands department and says, no, that person doesn't own the property, I own the property. And they present a title that says they have a right to the property as well. Then the property gets tied up in litigation while they figure that out, and that project comes to a standstill. Meanwhile, that project dies, investment dollars stop, maybe lines of credit go dead, and that project becomes a failure. So things to keep in mind. Possible materials theft, I talked about this a little bit earlier. If you buy a bunch of materials and you leave them on your site, very likely somebody's going to borrow those permanently and they're going to go away. It's why you have to work in security costs for your site. Make sure those properties are the property is properly watched. Make sure the materials are properly secured so that you aren't having loss of those and it's driving your cost up and or putting your project out of business. Let's talk about closing costs on properties when you buy property. When you move money to Belize, you're going to wire transfer that in. You're going to do that to a third-party escrow agent if you do it the right way, a reputable one. That money is going to be held, and there's going to be instructions as to how that money can be dispersed, either back to you or to the seller when that closes. So wire transfer and escrow agents are really important considerations. Do not ever give your money to the seller directly. If you do that, you're putting your money at risk. Not something I would advise. Also make sure that you're seeing the land title certificate before you invest. It's very common here for us to ask for a land title certificate when an offer is made. Once that offer is accepted, you want to take a look at that land title certificate. You immediately want to make sure that you do research on that. Make sure that, to the best of your ability, that title is not clouded, not encumbered, not a duplicate, and that you have the best potential to own that property free and clear at closing without any sort of issues. You're also going to want to make sure that when you close, that is properly recorded at the lands department, that all fees and closing costs have been properly paid, and that you are getting that title as soon as possible. Like I said, the closing process and getting your title now is being sped back up because central bank approval is not always required again on certain transactions, so that's a very, very good thing. There are ways to expedite transactions in Belize. If you'd like to talk about that, I can tell you some people that have been known to help things happen faster on the island or on the mainland. Given your time frame, you may or may not want to participate in that. I'm not condoning that or promoting that. I'm just saying that it does exist. Let's talk about property taxes. Property taxes in Belize are a lot lower than what we're used to in the States. Property taxes are extremely affordable, but we do have a stamp tax. So at closing, they take 8% of the price of the property minus the amount of, or the cost of, or the estimated cost of what's inside the property, meaning the furniture, the appliances. You take that amount and you times it times 8%, and at closing, you are coming up with that 8%. You pay that to the lands department, and you get your title as a result of that. Nobody gets around that. It is stamp tax. It needs to be paid. Your closing costs in general are going to go from 9% to 10%, depending upon what your legal costs are during the transaction. So count on that as part of your purchase price when you're buying property. In the past, there have been ways of avoiding stamp tax. Nowadays, it's a little more cumbersome to do that. There are still some ways of buying shares in a corporation whereby which there really is no transfer of a title. You're literally just buying shares and taking somebody off a title and putting somebody else on. But again, that still could trigger a stamp tax, but I know some people are still out there trying to make that happen so that stamp tax is actually avoided. But if you'd like to know more about that, please go to the Lands Department and Central Bank and look up stamp tax, and you will see exactly what the latest, greatest information is on that, because that is a moving information flow. So before you close, make sure that you have a letter saying that the owner authorizes you to be able to switch your utilities into your name. I've run into this many times where afterwards the seller's gone off to another country and the buyer's running around trying to get the utilities switched into their name, and they can't do it without a letter from the seller saying they authorized that. Don't be that guy. We'll get the letter up front before closing that says you have that authorization. Also find out what the current balances for property taxes are before closing. Find out what the current balances are on all utilities. I've seen lots of people get stuck with those after closing because they didn't do their research. Agent commissions. As a seller pays all the commissions. Buyer, you don't pay any agent commissions. So if an agent's coming to you saying you're going to have to pay commissions, know that that's generally not the case. It's paid from the seller's proceeds, and those commissions are then distributed to a buyer's agent if there's any sort of cooperation, and or retained by that agent if indeed they were the listing agent and the seller as well. I told you earlier about all perils insurance. As soon as you buy a property, you're going to want to make sure it's properly insured. Go down to the agent. Again, I can recommend some of those and ask for all perils insurance. You're also going to make sure before closing to know what the HOA fees are, know what they cover, and know what they don't cover. You're also going to want to get registered with the HOA as the new owner, and also understand how you're going to make those monthly HOA payments and what that amount is going to be. Central bank approval, I've mentioned several times, so you already know about that. But be sure to do your research on that. Go to the central bank website and go to the lands department, and you'll find the latest information that was literally just posted yesterday. I'm sorry, what?
Every transaction has different specific sets.
Yes, and each transaction, depending upon if it's local to local, expat to expat, or expat to local, has different rules and regulations. So you're definitely going to want to look that up. So I've talked about the investment strategies a little bit so far, but we'll go over it a little bit more. What type of investor are you? Are you speculative? Are you a lifestyle investor? Are you an ROI? Are you a person that wants to participate in the syndication, which I've talked about previously? Are you going to form a general partnership? Do you want to form a trust and have the trust invest on your behalf? Are you looking at using your retirement funds to invest in an investment property? Are you looking for the hotel resort model, or are you looking for a lease to own? Again, I've mentioned all of these previous in this, but I wanted to have this slide here to remind you of all these, so that if you have any questions, you can ask me following this presentation or in your consultation that you can have after this webinar. Management splits. This is a great topic, because management splits are what happens when you invest in a property and have it professionally managed. A management company is going to take part of your rents, a percentage, as they come in. So if you're having an individual house that you own, professionally managed, sometimes those can be 40 to even 60% of your rental price. Sometimes they're lower than that too, but they can be quite expensive depending upon what that management entails. If you own at a resort, what's the split between the resort management and you? Is it 70-30, 80-20, 80% going to you, 20% going to the management? You have to find that out ahead of time so that you know what your net is going to be. What expenses are handled by the HOA? What expenses are handled by the management? What is your true net going to be? Are you going to figure that out ahead of time? A lot of times people will say, well, it's an 80-20 split, and people will buy because they think that's the greatest deal. But what they don't realize is that, oh, that doesn't cover this expense and that expense and this expense and that expense. By the time you factor all those expenses in, plus that great split, you end up paying more on a monthly basis out of your rents than, say, maybe a resort that has a 50-50 split. So understand how your rental income is going to be divided. Very, very important consideration. Another thing, is that income going to be pooled, or is it going to be rotational? I'll explain this in detail. Some resorts pool all of the rental income, and then based upon what type of unit you own, they distribute that based upon a percentage that they've established based upon an equation that they developed. That's pretty cool if your unit's not rented, but your neighbor's unit is rented all the time. Guess what? You guys get the same amount of rent, and you get less wear and tear on your property. Cooled can be cool, unless you're the other guy that's getting all the wear and tear on your property, exactly, and you're not getting into the income. Or you're getting some of the income, but the same income as your neighbor's unit, which isn't getting the wear and tear and is getting the same amount of income. Let's talk about the other one, rotational. Rotational, let's say you own the beachfront unit, or not, actually there's three ways. Rotational, it just rotates around based upon the type of unit. So if you on rotation, it just goes around. If they say beachfront, well, there's 5 beachfront units, well, it goes from one unit to the next unit, the next unit, the next unit, every time somebody comes in to rent. If they say, I want to be at the back of the resort, same type of situation. There's also others that rotate not based upon unit, but based upon availability. So if somebody says, hey, I want to rent a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, well, they say, well, we have this one, or this one available based upon a rotation that they've developed. And those are the ones that become available next. So your unit's going to be rented based upon that rotation. In a pool, whether your unit's rented or not, you're still going to get some income. So you got to find out how the resort is written, their rules as far as yours being in the rental pool. How many weeks or months out of the year do you even get to use it to be a participant in that pool, how's that money going to be divided once you're in that rental program or pool? And once you know all that, then you can figure out what your true ROI is going to be, and or what your lifestyle and or use model is going to look like as well. If you have any questions about all of that, I'm always here to advise you about all of this. This is why I tell people, don't try to navigate this stuff on your own. There is so much to know, and what you don't know can hurt you. So I appreciate you trusting me to be one of your advisors in this process. Again, if you have any questions about all of this or any of this that I've mentioned, you can always reach me at info@paradiseguy.com. All right, let's get back into other models that exist. Timeshares. Timeshares are not real big, but they're kind of making a comeback in Belize now. And the reason for that is we're getting a lot of people that are coming down saying, listen, I don't have the money to buy a unit outright. I'd like to come down for a couple weeks out of the month and use a nice place on the beach. I don't need to own it, but I'd like to have those rights to it, whether that's a fractional ownership, whether that's a timeshare, whether that's a vacation sharing program, or whatever they want to call it. Those are starting to pop back up in the marketplace. You have to be careful what you buy into. You have to know what you're buying into. You have to know what your use is. You have to know whether that's restricted use to a particular unit, or whether they rotate you to different units based upon availability. You have to know what time of year you're getting used to that. Is it every other year? Is it once a year? Is it 2 weeks out of the year? Lots to know around that. So before you do any of that, please talk to me about that. There's a lot to know. Wholesaling. Okay, there are people that come down here and they will put a property under contract at a ridiculously low price, and then they will wholesale that to another investor. It's a model down here. Is it done all the time? No, because people down here generally want good top dollar on their properties. But if you find one of those properties down here and they're willing to allow you to tie it up for a while you go and market it and try to sell it yourself, and you got some non-refundable money up front that they get no matter what during that time frame, you can go ahead and wholesale that property. And it is a viable business plan. People do it all the time. It works depending upon the market that you're in. There are fix and flips. There are distressed properties that you can buy, you can fix up, and you can flip, as long as you know what you're doing. Lots of profit potential in that as well. You can self-manage properties. If you're here and you want to self-manage it yourself, not a bad model. It's a little bit more work, but if you know what you're doing, you keep more money in your pocket, which can be a great thing. And it can be enjoyable depending upon if you like doing that or not. There's apartments and multi-unit as well. Not a lot of apartments in the market down here. I believe it's an underutilized segment of the population as far as availability. There's a lot of people out there, expats, locals, that are in need of a place to live. Somebody coming down here and developing affordable apartments, I think has the potential to do quite well in that. If you like questions about how to do that, good locations for that, costs for that, construction of something like that, and or how to rent to the local and expat market, please hit me up and I'm happy to share that information with you. Okay, let's talk taxes on real estate income earned. It's very low in Belize. So your tax liability when you earn rental income is very low. It's 3% per month for rents received in excess of $800 Belize per month. Most real estate related expenses, mortgage payments, repairs, property taxes, insurance, etc., do not qualify as deductions. Taxes payable are based on gross revenues, not net income for tax purposes. So when we do taxes here in Belize, it's once a month, and it's not a tax return like we're used to in the States where you're filling out and you're taking deductions, depreciation, and all those things. But there's no capital gains or inheritance tax on the back end. So you're paying a flat rate. It's based upon gross revenues retained by you or earned by you. No annual returns. If you qualify as a hotel, though, there's a 9% hotel tax that must be paid that you need to factor into things. Annual property taxes are due by March 30th, and like I mentioned earlier, annual property taxes are quite lowable and payable to the applicable municipality. So very important points that I covered there. Make sure you understand what game you're in as far as taxes when you're investing and how you're going to use the property and how that's going to affect you. You also need to understand what the taxes are going to be in your country of origin, because there are different rules there as well. I will mention this as a side note, foreign earned income, if you're living in Belize, up to 120K approximately. Look this up on the IRS website or talk to your tax professional. But your first $120,000 approximately of foreign earned income can be exempt from taxes in the United States on income you earn in Belize. But that means that you have to live in Belize almost full time. So if you're not willing to live in Belize almost full time, at least for that tax year, it's not applicable. But if you are, definitely consult with your tax professional and or look at the IRS site and they'll tell you the current rules and regulations around that, because that could be $120,000 of foreign earned income without any tax consequence, which means a good thing. All right. Let's talk about the MLS and licensing one last time. No oversight by the Board of Realtors, no centralized database, no ethics board, no disciplinary committee, no standard or accepted best practices, no standard contracts, little cooperation between brokerages and agents, although that's getting better. People want to sell what they got and keep all the money. This does not serve the client's best interests. It does not move properties as quickly as they could be if everybody just got together, centralized the database, got the MLS, and cooperated amongst each other. If this all happened, this market would be moving at a much faster pace. But I also believe that financing is part of this as well. So when financing and MLS and centralized database and cooperation, when all this comes together, the appreciation in this market is going to go through the roof. So those of you that are thinking long-term or maybe even generational wealth here, when this happens, and we know it will because it's happened everywhere else, when this happens, your property or properties here in this market are going to experience tremendous appreciation, and they're going to benefit either you, if you're still around, or your heirs. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. Title search process, I've talked a little bit about this so far. There are very few reputable title properties, title insurance companies. Belize land certificates, though, just to put you a little bit at ease, are guaranteed by the government of Belize. In Belmopan, there are facilitators and or attorneys and or agents, like I said, that can help you research that title, make sure it's good and clear, unencumbered, not clouded in any way, shape, or form. Titles research is highly recommended. Please do not do business without it. Legal counsel, of course, is recommended as well. I can direct you to some attorneys that do a very nice job down here for you. It's also part of the closing process and the expense of your closing costs. Duplicate titles do exist. I don't want to scare you. It's not prevalent, but have they happened in the future or in the past? Yes. Will they happen again in the future? Yes. But title research is going to help mitigate that risk. Fee simple title is available. Strata title is available. Shares and share certificates and corporations are available. You got to make sure, again, no encumbrances on these titles. Make sure that you're dealing with reputable companies, agents, attorneys, and or people that are researching these titles, and that you're getting the best information possible. Again, if you ever want to double check something, if you happen to not be working with me for some reason, shoot me an email, shoot me a text, give me a call. I'm happy to look over it and say, hey, that seems above board, seems like a good deal, and or tell you, hey, watch out, you might want to do this and this and this to protect yourself. Always here to help. Entity formation is also something you need to consider in Belize. You can form a corporation and hold title to your property in that. Many times, private properties titles are held in the name of a corporation, and what you buy is you buy all the shares in the corporation, and then that corporation becomes your corporation. There are trusts where you can buy in the name of the trust. You can do the whole trust thing, which is fairly complicated. If you need to do that, I can put you in contact with people that actually form those trusts, have experience doing that with high-level investors. Central bank approval, again, that has changed just here in the last week. You need to go do some research on that and see what the latest greatest on that is going to be, because they're literally, the ink hasn't dried on that yet. Squatters rights is a question I get down here quite common, because there are squatters down in Belize, and if you leave your property alone for too long, you can't get squatters. But squatters rights, their rights and procedures down in Belize really aren't very strong. They have to actually occupy for like 30 years. It has to be undisputed occupation. So really squatters rights are almost non-existent down here, but that doesn't keep somebody from occupying your property while you're not here. So make sure you got somebody watching your property if you're not here. Make sure you've got a good property management company as well to make sure that that's not the case. Like I mentioned earlier, stamp tax is 8% if you're buying down in Belize. It's generally unavoidable. There are still some people that will tell you can't avoid that. Be careful around that. You certainly don't want that to come back and bite you in the future when you're not expecting it. There is no capital gains, no inheritance tax, property taxes are low. HOA fees, buyer beware, make sure you understand what they are, what they've been in the past. Have they been paid? What does the HOA fee actually include? Does it cover cable? Does it cover water? Does it cover maintenance? And if maintenance of what? Does it cover septic? There are lots of con artists and scams in Belize. Not saying that is a negative, but there's con artists and scams everywhere. So I'm not making it specific to Belize, but buyer beware, know that those are here. Again, the more representation you have, the more clear you are with what you're buying, the resources that you use, the methods you use to buy something, how the money moves, with whom the money moves, all of these things make a difference. Also knowing the history of the development, talking with other buyers of the development, understanding how long that development has been in process, understanding the background of the developer and or developers, and it goes on and on and on. So you can see why I did a webinar specifically on real estate, because there is a ton to know when you're doing this. So we've reached that magic point where it is now time for question and answers. Anything that you have jotted down along the way, I'm going to go ahead and put us into Q&A mode now. And you can go ahead and ask any question that you have figured out along the way that you'd like to ask. You can also save those for your private consultation, which came as part of you being part of this webinar today. But if you have anything that you'd like to ask, no question is a silly answer. And I know I covered things pretty well, but I certainly didn't answer every question about everything. So I'm sure something stuck in your mind. So feel free to just go ahead and go down to the chat in the lower right-hand corner down here on your screen, and feel free to type up any question you have, and I'll answer them. Okay, I see a question coming in. All right, question is, I'm interested in visiting in or around the Christmas time frame for at least 2 weeks. Is that a good time to visit? Historically, that has been an amazing time to visit. It is one of the more expensive times historically to visit because that is what we call ultra high season. It's around Thanksgiving, it's around Christmas. Obviously, that's when the kids are out of school. It's when people are out of work and people have saved all year for their Christmas or winter vacation. People want to get out of the cold, they want to come to a warm climate. So that is historically super high season. This year, it's not going to be super high season. And the reason for that is because tourism right now, as of August 15th, is just starting to trickle open. By November, they're hoping to be more open. Now that depends. When this first wave of people comes into Belize, if COVID cases proliferate and the government gets conservative and decides, no, we need to slow things back down, then guess what? November, December could be a very slow time. If the government says, hey, you know what? We don't care. We're going to open this up and we're going to invite everybody in. Well, November, December could be more crowded, but I do not think it's going to be as crowded or expensive as it has been in the past. As a matter of fact, I'd almost guarantee it's not going to be, because all of the merchants, all of the hotels, at least the gold standard ones that are allowed to take people in, are going to be very, very hungry for your business. And so there are going to be special deals, and there's going to be special incentives and special pricing everywhere you go. The restaurants are going to be begging for your business. The hotels are going to be begging for your business. And the tour operators and the excursion operators are going to be begging for your business. So Belize needs tourism. Belize needs your money. So in order for this country to survive, everybody's got to work together to make sure that we make it as inviting as possible for you to come down here and spend your money on vacation, invest in property, stay here, live here, whatever you want to do. But Belize right now has been shut down completely for months. So this opening August 15th is going to be something you're going to keep an eye on. And if you're planning a trip, what I've been advising people to do is schedule around the November, December timeframe, because we're going to know a lot more about what the market's going to look like at this point. And I think that you'll be able to roam the island more freely at that point in time. This first group that comes in August and September are going to be very, very limited as far as what they're going to be able to do and where they're going to be able to go. So if you came down in September or August and you're planning on just driving the island yourself or with an agent to go see properties, it's probably not going to be something that you can do very easily. So hopefully that answered your question. If anybody has another question, please go ahead and submit it now.
I think by Christmas time.
Okay, I see another question coming in. By the way, thank you for that last question. That was a very good question. All right, the next question is, am I available to meet in person? And if so, where? Right now, Belize is making it difficult for face-to-face meetings. So it depends upon time. It also depends upon if I'm in town. In the past, I have always met with people when they come to Belize face-to-face. We've always met at Blue Water Grill, which is a nice beachfront bar and restaurant right on the Caribbean Sea, right across from the airport terminal in San Pedro. It's a great place to meet, and it's on the island of Ambergris Caye. In the future, it depends upon what's allowed as far as face-to-face meetings. It also depends on if I'm in town or not. I do plan this next year to be traveling as much as possible, as much as COVID will allow, between Mexico, obviously the States, and of course, Belize. If I'm in town and I know when you're coming, absolutely I will schedule time with you and meet with you in person. Generally over lunch is when I like to do that. So just keep that in mind. As much advance warning as you can give me, the better. Also, when you're planning your trip, if you will send me what you want to do, what your budget is, what your time frame is as far as how long you're going to be in town, I can help plan out the logistics of that for you. Things are changing all the time as far as what they're going to allow, what they're not going to allow, what tour operators you're going to be able to use, what hotels you're going to be able to stay in, whether or not you're going to be able to get in the golf cart and go around the island or not, whether you're going to be able to have face-to-face meetings. It's all ebbing and flowing, and it's constant. So when you're planning your trip, definitely contact me and let me see if I can help. Okay, I see somebody else is typing a question up right now. Okay, we got our next question in. Our next question is, I currently run a mold remediation business, and we've recently, due to COVID, also addressing infection control options as well. Okay, how can I relocate and introduce my business model to Belize and possibly employ Belizean staff as well? Do you think that there's a market in Belize? Wow, that's a great question. So, yeah, going forward, I mean, we've got mold everywhere because obviously it's a humid climate. Generally, people don't worry about mold too much. Now, North American clients that come in and see mold, yes, they tend to throw their hands in the air and go, oh my gosh, there's mold. Once you understand that mold is just part of the environment, has been forever down there and will continue to be, and doesn't seem to hurt anybody, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But then again, I don't know how the mold thing's going to go. But when it comes to COVID and cleaning and decontamination and disinfecting, things of that nature, I think there is a tremendous future in Belize for that. And if you're going to come in and you're going to train the local people, that's going to be a business that's easier to start. What Belize doesn't really appreciate is expats coming in and trying to take jobs from Belizean citizens. What they will work with you on is you coming in and starting a business and facilitating the training and the employment of the Belizean workforce. So yes, if you can come in with that expertise, that business model, and you know how to do it, and you know how to educate, and you know how to run that type of business, as long as you figure out how to market that business in Belize, which I might be able to help you with a little bit there. Yeah, I think that's got definite potential in Belize. So if any of you out there are thinking of any business ideas of what to do, I'm an entrepreneur my whole life. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Obviously, I've been in real estate for 30 years. But I love looking around and seeing opportunity. In Belize, there's no shortage of business opportunities. But you have to come down and you have to spot the opportunity. You have to figure out, what do I want to do? What do I want my work life down there to look like? Or do I want to be retired? If you want to be retired, there is no option for you to work. because you have to qualify as a retired person, and if you work, you get disqualified. If you're going to work, you need a work permit. If you're going to start a business, you need a work permit. So I can get into all of that, but it was actually covered in my last webinar. My last webinar was the Belize overview. I covered all of that. I'm also going to do a future webinar, which is going to be nothing about how to start a business in Belize and how to invest or buy an existing business. So stay tuned. That'll be an upcoming webinar as well. So hopefully I've answered that question for you. If not, let's talk more in the consultation that you've got coming here in the future, and or you can send me an email. Great question though, thank you. Thank you very much for asking that. I see we've got a couple more questions coming, so I'll sit here and wait while I get ready for the next question. One thing we do in Belize, you drink a lot of water. All right, here we go. Well, somebody just made a comment saying that today's presentation was excellent, and I look forward, God bless, to meeting you to clearly ID what I want to do and look forward to the consultation. Well, bless you all. I appreciate everybody that has given me the platform and the opportunity to share the information that I do via ParadiseGuy.tv. Everybody who contacts me, that allows me to help contact them and educate them and guide them. I take the trust that you and anybody else puts in me very, very seriously. And I thank you all very, very much for sharing this time with me. This will be put into a recorded mode afterwards. I'll let everybody know when that is done. If you'd like access to that in the future, because you'd like to rewatch part or all of it, certainly I'll make that available to you. Hopefully you'll be at my next webinar, which will be at the end of this month. And of course, if you want to go back and watch other pre-recorded webinars like the Belize overview, do that. Of course, all of y'all that were on this webinar today are entitled to that consultation. So email me and we'll go ahead and get that on my schedule. And last but not least, I sure hope that you guys have all followed me on Facebook. If not, just get on Facebook and just search The Paradise Guy. You just like or follow my page, and then we can message back and forth there, and we can also make sure that all the videos and all the content that I'm putting up there, you have access to as well. And of course, you're also welcome to friend me on my personal site, which is Will Paradise Guy Narod. You can look that up on Facebook as well. And if you're on Instagram, just search The Paradise Guy. You can find me there as well. So yes, I'm all over social media, but I'm just trying to make sure that I'm disseminating this information, helping as many people as I possibly can. Thank you all for being on this call. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and submit them now. And if not, I'm going to wrap this up for the day. Again, thank you so much for being here. As always, my name is William Narod. I am the Paradise Guy. I hope to meet you down here in Belize soon. Cheers.